Okay, great, thank you. All right, so a link to provide feedback on this workshop will be provided toward the end. Post questions or comments in the chat feature. After Mr. Evans' presentation, questions and comments will be addressed. This workshop will be recorded, and access to the recorded workshop may be requested through the Student Success Center's website, which I will also post in the chat feature. Also, we have provided a workshop, a handout for you on how to make the most of this workshop, which is a plan, and that's also available through our website, and that is posted in the chat feature, and I will share that link again. At this time, I will go ahead and introduce Mr. Evans. Mr. Darren Evans is a director of the Virtual Learning Community, Professional Development Center, and the Accessibility Technologist at Wake Tech Community College. He has his master's in instructional technology and design and is a former middle school teacher and technology facilitator. He has presented across the state and nationally on accessibility, course design, and online teaching. Darren works with faculty and staff across the curriculum at all 58 community colleges on creating and delivering effective, accessible content. So Mr. Evans, I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to you to share your content. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for that introduction, and thank you everybody for attending today. I know you're very busy and there's a lot that you could be doing today, so thank you for that. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about accessibility today and just ways you can make your content more accessible. So this presentation is sort of in two parts. First, I'm going to just sort of introduce you to that concept of accessibility. And then we're going to give you 5 simple things you can do to, once you listen to this presentation and you leave here, 5 simple things you can do to make your content more accessible today. But we're going to start, I'm going to show you a short video that has my accessibility mentor in it. And he's one of the best computer scientists actually on planet Earth. And you actually know him, but you don't know you know him. You know his work. If you've ever used Amazon or Netflix and you get a movie, it says, you like this movie, you'll like that movie. Or on Amazon, you like this book, you'll like that book. He was one of the people who wrote that algorithm. And you actually, you know him quite well, but you don't know you know him. So I'm going to share my screen and we're just going to watch a short video from WRAL. And it's only about a minute long, and then we'll get into the presentation.
Don't think twice about reading a chart or a graph, but imagine visualizing data you can't see.
Sas has developed new software to help blind users see data in a unique way. WRAL's Brian Schrader shows us how it works.
That's Chewy on the floor. He's Ed Summers' guide dog.
When I was a child, I was diagnosed with a disease called retinitis pigmentosa.
It's a degenerative retinal disease.
Over the last 35 years or so, I've lost almost all my vision.
Summers is the senior manager of accessibility at Sas Software in Cary, finding ways to make sure people of all abilities can use the software. And he's showing me a new breakthrough. Software that allows the visually impaired to see data on a chart or graph. It's the Sas Graphics Accelerator. It scans a graph and changes low.
So we're having some issues here. Okay, well, I'll stop that share. Looks like we're having some issues there. But as you can see, Ed Summers is blind now. He works at Sas and he develops accessibility software. The reason I wanted to start with that is I wanted you to see that accessibility has a lot of commercial applications. Now, Sas is not a company known for their altruism, okay? They're a for-profit company. And the reason they employ Ed is to create software that'll be easier for everyone to use. Right? They see a utility, there's a business case for them to have an accessibility department, to employ Ed, to create these sort of products. So part of my mission here today is to get you to think about accessibility in sort of a broader, more maybe inclusive way. Maybe is not a way that, well, I have to do this because it's the law or I have disabled students. I want you to think about it as a way to sort of widen the path for everybody, to make things better and easier to use for everybody, not just people with disabilities. So that's kind of my secondary mission for you today. So we're going to start in just a minute. We're going to start a slideshow, and we'll go over some. We'll go over a couple of things about accessibility. And as I said, you're going to leave here with 5 simple things that you can do to make your content more accessible today. As soon as you're finished listening to me, which I'll try not to keep you too long. Okay, so we're going to start out, and I call this the low-hanging fruit of digital accessibility. It's low-hanging because we're going to talk about accessibility and just some of the things that you can easily do to make your content more accessible. So first off, we'll start out with what is accessibility. Actually, we should look at the objectives first, okay? So in this training, we're going to be introduced to digital accessibility. And then, as I said, you're going to learn 5 easy things you can do to create more accessible content. And as we're going, please, if you have a question or I talk too fast or I make a point that's not necessarily clear, just type in the chat and we'll answer all those questions at the end. So what is accessibility? It's just the degree to which a product, service, or an environment can be used by anyone, regardless of who they are. And our goal is universal access. We want to create things one time that anyone can use. So accessible courses that are designed with accessibility in mind, if you use it as, I like to talk about accessibility as just being part of the design process, right? It's not an extra, it's just our design language. If you build it right the first time, it's going to save you time from having to make things accessible in the future. And once you incorporate accessibility into your design language, it just becomes much easier to do. And it is the law, but I don't use the law when I'm talking to people. That's sort of my nuclear weapon. I use that as a last resort. But usually I try to get people to see how this creating accessible content actually helps them just as much as it helps their students. So we have Section 508, which is a federal law, which just says you have to create accessible content. And then we have the North Carolina General Assembly Bill 866. Now, if you have insomnia and you can't sleep, Google this and read the whole passage, and it'll put you out very, very quickly. But it's essentially saying the same thing as 508, just a little bit more wordy, I would say. So these are the laws. And again, I'm not going to talk much about those. Now, I do want to talk about a distinction that we don't often make, and one thing that gets confusing. There's a difference between accommodation and accessible content. Accommodation is when I go to a college and I declare I have a disability, say, I'm hearing impaired. But most of the people at your college that really need accessible content, they're never going to be identified by DSS. So accommodation is I go to my local college, I say, I've got a hearing impairment, so I get a note taker, I get extra time on tests. If I was visually impaired, I get a Braille textbook, I get assistive technology like a screen magnifier, screen reader, and that's accommodation. Accessibility is the instructor's responsibility. That's having properly structured content, having alt text for images and multimedia, having good color contrast, hyperlinks that are meaningful, name frames and buttons on your website, form fields that are labeled, sort of that semantic HTML as they call it. So that's the accessibility part of things. Accommodation is separate. So a lot of times people will say, well, I don't have anybody with a disability in my class. Well, maybe you don't, or maybe you do, who knows? But that's not what accessible content is for necessarily. And a lot of people use screen readers, which are just, as you saw there, Ed can't see the screen, so he interacts with the computer through what he hears, through sound, through that screen reader that reads the menus, how to save, everything you do with your computer and your mouse visually, he does through sound. So let's sort of forget about accessibility for a second. For disabled people, let's kind of just put that to the side for a second. What is your typical user? Do you have one? Is there such thing as a typical user? We all learn differently, right? So some people are visual learners, some like hands-on learning, some prefer to read content. So really the purpose of this slide is there really is no such thing as a typical user. And when I create accessible content, as you'll see a little bit later, it helps everybody. So we want to think about accessibility as being more, it's actually a much broader topic than we think. A lot of times we think, oh, this is just about people with disabilities, or I need to make, this document so that someone who was blind, screen reader will read it. But you'll see that by widening that path or making it easier, you actually make it easier for everybody, not just people with disabilities. And this is one of my favorite cartoons because it's instructive of a lot of things. When I first got into accessibility about, gosh, these years are running together, maybe about 13 years ago, someone was suing all the big cities of America for wheelchair ramps and curb cuts. And whoever was doing it they didn't want their identity to be known, or they didn't want publicity, but they had deep pockets and they were ready to sue, New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, St. Louis, Kansas City, Charlotte, just the bigger cities, Miami, and they were willing to spend whatever amount of money they had to. Well, the identity we'll talk about who it was a little bit later. It's probably not who you think. We thought it was a disability rights group or someone like that. It wasn't. But getting back to this cartoon, it says, the kid in the wheelchair says, could you please shovel the ramp? And the custodian says, all these other kids are waiting. After I shovel the stairs, then I'll shovel the ramp for you. And the kid in the wheelchair says, but if you shovel the ramp, we can all get it. Right? You only have to do it one time. It's actually less work for the custodian, or he can, eventually do the stairs at his leisure. Well, it turns out that the entity that was suing all these big cities for curb cuts and wheelchair ramps was Federal Express, which makes a lot of sense if you think about it, right? They have a time-bound mission. They need those wheelchair ramps and curb cuts. They weren't designed for Federal Express. In fact, when the Americans with Disabilities Act was signed into law in the 70s, Federal Express didn't even exist as a company. So again, by you understanding that those curb cuts, those wheelchair ramps offer a lot of utility to people they weren't necessarily designed for. Now, how do we have accessibility standards? Well, here are the accessibility standards. You can go to w3.org and see all the accessibility standards, but you don't need to know that. People like me need to know that. The people at your college don't really need to know all of it. They need to know some of it, but not all of it. Like I said, your local accessibility person needs to know all of it. Well, most of it, not quite all of it. But just what are some of the major things you're supposed to do to create accessible content? But what you do need to know is that most disabilities are invisible. And your users are all very different. You can't look at someone and tell if they have a disability. Most of them are hidden. They may be dyslexic, or they may have a hearing impairment. You can't look at someone and tell that. But you do need to understand that by creating accessible content or universal design with accessible content, you're creating as broad a base as you can for everybody. And you do need to know a few basic skills that you can use to make your content more accessible. And we always need to know where to turn for help. So that's your part of it. So now we're going to talk about the low-hanging fruit of accessibility. Now, this is just an introduction. I would be happy to present at your college. If you have any questions on some of these topics, we can do a deep dive. Back in the before times, before COVID, I would travel to your college. We'd get in a computer lab and we'd do hands-on. It wouldn't be just me talking. We'd have exercises or problems or even some of your content, and we would just work through it together. It wouldn't just be me talking. We'd sit in that lab for, an hour or two. And, we tend to do a deep dive into an individual topic and get it done and not keep you all day. But this is what I call the low-hanging fruit. And you're going to see how some of this will benefit you before we go. But these are things that you can do today that'll help you create more accessible content. So let's get started. This is what we call our low-hanging fruit. And the first one is to use headings in Word and actually to use styles. And I'll show you how these headings and styles are accessibility features, but really they're not. Really, they're usability features disguised as accessibility features. They're about creating structure for your documents. And the thing I really like about teaching accessible Word, that's one of my favorite things to teach, is being in that computer lab at a college and seeing the light bulb go off in the participants' heads when they realize, oh, I'm learning how to actually use Word better and more efficiently. This really is not about accessibility. They realize that a side effect of me really learning Word, because most of us have never sat down where somebody said, hey, this is what these styles do in Word. Here's how to properly use that font group. Here's how to use spacing in Word. The accessibility is built right into Word. And I teach a class on Word, but I don't mention the word accessibility for the first 10 weeks of the semester. Because what I want my students to see is that by you learning Word really well and becoming really efficient at it, a side effect of that is you're going to create accessible documents. So I don't want them to see the accessibility piece as something separate. I want them to see that as part of really learning Word and becoming more efficient. And by the time the class is over, they create accessible documents, not out of any need to please me or because I care about it. They do it because it's easier that way. You understand the software better. It's easier and more efficient that way. So headings, I could talk to you for hours right now about styles in Word and how you can sort of automate the creation of documents, how you can make it a lot easier for you, and you can create that structure. And that structure is something that you'll benefit from too. And we'll see that a little bit later of why styles are very important and how they're useful to you as a creator. So that's the first thing we can do, is just use styles in Word, even if you don't necessarily understand the accessibility ramifications or why you're even using it. If you use those styles, the accessibility is built right into Word. You just have to understand how to use it. And like I said, most of us have never sat down and been in a class where someone walked us through the features of Word. We sat down and started typing, and we did it by trial and error. So that's the first thing you can do. The next thing is to add alternative text to your images and descriptions. And what alternative text does is, see, I send Ed Ed is sort of my accessibility mentor. So I send him documents all the time. And this might surprise you, but I always send him pictures with my documents, even though I know he can't see them. But if I have alternative text, it lets him know, okay, there's a picture here and here's why it's here. So that just lets people with visual impairments know there's a picture here and here's the context of that picture. Now, alternative text is more sort of art than science. The text should equal the image. And you want to make sure you have something called image description. So that's where you just describe the image. What is this image for? And that's a pedagogical thing. And we'll talk about that in just a second. So this is a picture of downtown Mexico City. All right, this is the Elle Angel statue. Again, Elle Angel is just a gold sculpture that lets you know you're in the arts district of downtown Mexico City. So if you ever get lost, you're in Mexico City, you look up, you see Elle Angel, you're in the arts district, and then you can go from there with your map or however you're getting around. Now I'm gonna make a sort of a philosophical argument for colleges. I think in a college class, we really only use images for three reasons. They're either an example of something, their decoration, or their content. And by content, I don't always mean it's a class. I had a lady at one college say, I never post images with content. And I asked her, I said, well, what do you do at this college? She said, oh, I'm in financial aid. I said, really? She said, yeah. I said, well, okay. So I brought up the financial aid website and she posted an infographic on how to apply for financial aid. I said, ma'am, that's content. You could argue that's some of the most important content at this college. I mean, you could certainly make that argument. So again, what your alt text is going to look like, your image descriptions. This is a deep subject, but let's say this is just a geography class that I'm at, let's say Montgomery Community College. So I explain what this image is. So let's say Ed's in my class, I explain what the image is, why it's there. Does he really care about the color or the green trees? Not really. He wants to know what's the purpose, what is the context of that image? Why is it there? So in this one, here's my image description, a photo of the downtown Mexico City skyline with the Elle Angel statue in the foreground. The statue is a gold sculpture of the winged goddess Victory, which commemorates Mexico's independence from Spain. So that's really all it's there for. Now, my image description and my alt text would change depending on the context. Is this an art history class? Right? Why do I have this image there? But I do need to write something in letting him know. And here's how I do the alt text for this. Let me go back. Well, I'll show you that in just a second. But that's alt text. Now, I told you it's more art than science. So let's look at the next image. How would you describe that image? Well, it's going to depend on what you're doing. So I'm going to show you the alt text I put for this image. So I'm going to click on this image. I'm going to go down to Format Picture. And I'm going to go to alt text. So under Format Picture, this third icon from the left is alternative text. And I just put a young boy in a school photo. He's wearing glasses and a purple pullover with the Los Angeles Laker logo on the front. Because really, that's all that's important, right? Is this a cute kid? Well, yeah, I think so, but that's because he's mine. But that's really not important to the point we're trying to make. That's really not important to the alt text. So I may send this to Ed and just say, or anybody else with a visual impairment, and just let him know that it's just a young boy in he's in a school photo. So again, our image descriptions and our alt text is going to change depending on the context of why we're using these images, why they're there. what is the context of them? I'd like you to think about image descriptions as being for everybody. And this is a sort of a pedagogical thing. But here, I've got this Elle image. This description is for everybody. My sighted students can read the description, look at the photo, read the description, and they go, oh, okay, I get why this is here. That's just pure pedagogy, right? It's easier to understand for everybody. I know Ed's screen reader will read it. And then for the alt text here, I just put El Angel statue, downtown Mexico City, because I described why it was there. And that's the context of it. And that's the art and science of it. Again, we could talk for a couple hours about alt text and image descriptions. And if you want some training on that, I'd be happy to, come to your college, or we can do that. In this image, it might be, the alt text might be about this young boy's pullover, right? Or it might be about glasses for 8-year-olds, right? It could be, so the alt text and the image description would change depending on the context. Another thing you can do is, one of the big accessibility bottlenecks we have, and that we've been working on at the PD Center for about 5 years, is accessible math. How do you get math to be read accurately by screen readers? Well, that's not very easy, really. It can be done, but it's an involved process. And the good thing is we're getting better at it, but it's an involved process. So the first thing you can do is do something that's called Mathml. And Mathml is screen reader accessible. But you don't need to learn Mathml, but you do need to find a way to get the math you use into Mathml. And there's an easy way to do that by using this program called MathType. It goes right into Word. It's just a plugin in Word. You can easily create math with it. It works just like the Microsoft equation editor. So it's very easy to use, and it lets you output math in an accessible format. And it's $49. So if your math department is struggling with creating accessible math, one thing you can recommend to them is MathType. LaTeX is it's a document preparation system, and probably every math book you've ever had has been published with LaTeX. The good thing about LaTeX is there's a couple of adjustments you can make to create accessible math with LaTeX. And most of the colleges I've been to, there's at least one person on staff that knows LaTeX. You learn that in graduate school mostly, or math majors usually do. And it's just a document preparation system. It's just a way they publish math and science books. If somebody on your staff knows LaTeX, then congratulations. You essentially have accessible math in your college. There's just a few adjustments you'll have to make, and there's a process to it, but you have the building blocks for creating accessible math. Make sure your videos are captioned. So, we talked about the things that you can do today. You can use those headings and styles in Word. You can make sure you have alt text and image descriptions in your content. You can have your math in the Mathml. And another easy one is just captions. Just make sure if you have videos, make sure your videos are captioned. And again, captions are something that seem to be for people who are, deaf or hard of hearing. But I had a student come up to me, gosh, I don't know what year it is now, but I guess this was pre-pandemic, and said, "Thank you for captioning all your videos." And I was just curious. I asked her, I said, why do you care? I mean, you're not hearing impaired. She said, well, sometimes I forget my headphones and I want to watch a video, or I'm studying late at night and I've got a baby that, her crib is in my room. I may want to study. I don't want to have, she's a light sleeper. So I use the captions there. And a long time ago when I was in college, I did an exchange in Montreal. And I could speak French fairly well. I mean, like most young people, I knew all the bad words. But how I really learned French was I would just watch the weather report and I'd turn on the closed caption. And I actually learned more doing that, watching news and weather with closed caption, and then all my years of taking French. It helped me. So closed captions help, English language, or if somebody doesn't speak the primary language. So I really do think those captions help me learn sort of those nuances of, French Canadian, which I learned French, which was slightly different. It's like, if you go to Louisiana and talk to somebody, or you go to New York City, it's a different sort of inflection. So those closed captions are a lot more helpful than you think.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Hey, you're providing a lot of resources here for us to consider, as well as some tips. And I love the low-hanging fruit. Do you want to wait till the end to answer questions? I know we had 2 questions that that are relevant to 2 of the tips that you provided early on.
Yeah, let's wait. We're almost done, and I want to show you. I'll answer those questions, and then I'll show you some practical application.
Excellent. Thank you. Just wanted to check in.
Thank you for that. And now, where can you find help? Well, you can go to the VLC accessibility page. We have what's called an accessibility handbook. That goes into a lot more detail than what I've gone in here today, just because we don't have time. You can go to WebAIM, and you can email me if you have any questions at daevans3@waketech.edu. Now, no one in this community college system can say they ever emailed me and they did not get a response in 48 hours. Well, one person can, because it went to my junk mail. But that was not my fault. I eventually did answer this person, but they can say they didn't like the answer they got, but they always got one. So we're willing to help and do whatever. That's what we do at the PD Center. So our job is to make accessible content easier to create, to help you design courses. And again, we don't look at accessibility as separate. That's just part of our design language. It's like if you ride down the street and you see a Volvo, you can tell it's a Volvo because it's designed a certain way. Or you drive down the road and you see a Lexus, you can tell that's a Lexus before you even look at it, just because of their design language. So accessibility is just part of our design language, and we don't necessarily view that as being separate from how we create content. It's part of our process, and we do it like that in the beginning. And that is all I have for you. I'm going to stop sharing this, and I just want to show you something very quickly on how we might want to use those styles that we talked about in Word. We talked about styles, and we talked about headings. So I want to show you how headings can help you, even though they are an accessibility feature. I want to show you some of the utility and some of the usability of headings. So let me share that with you. And we'll just do a sort of a brief overview here. Let me share my screen again. Okay. All right, so, well, the person that I'm going to talk about is retired now, so I won't get in trouble. But my old boss at Wake Tech used to give us these very, very, very long documents. And now I'm not thinking about people with accessibility, with disabilities right now. I'm thinking about me, okay? So she would give us these long documents. She was a good boss. I enjoyed having her, but she was very particular with how she did stuff. And one of the things she would do, she'd give us these long documents. We'd have to read them, and then we'd have a roundtable meeting on a Friday. It was usually always a Friday, and she would just sort of quiz us on what was on these documents. So she gave us this document, and if you look closely down here, you can see that this document is 68 pages, and it's 17,927 words. Now, I know that all of y'all are model employees, but I didn't feel like reading this. All right, and I told my boss, I said, well, I don't, she gave this to me on a Wednesday at 4:30, and I leave at 5, and we were gonna meet Friday and talk about this, and she would quiz you on this and what you were supposed to learn. It was part of your job, and she was a demanding boss, but a good boss. So I told her, I said, I don't know if I'll be able to read all of this because I have a friend come into town. She said, really? I said, yeah, his name is Victor Newman. And she's like, wait, that's the guy on The Young and the Restless. And I was like, oh yeah. I wanted to watch The Young and the Restless. I didn't feel like reading this whole thing. So what I did was, it turns out that my boss creates accessible documents, not because she's trying to please me. It's because she knows how to use Word really, really well and really, really effectively. So as I said, a side effect of that was she was going to create accessible documents. So she said, Darren, I want you to concentrate on student learning outcomes and student learning actions. So again, I didn't really tell her about Victor Newman or that I wanted to catch up on The Young and the Restless because that wasn't relevant, but I did. So what I did was when I got this document, and again, I'm not thinking about people with disabilities right now. I'm not thinking about accessibility in the broadest sense. I'm not really thinking about it. So the first thing I did when I got this document was what I opened it up and I went to View, and I went to Navigation Pane. And then the Navigation Pane has basically 3 sections. And again, this is where we're going to talk about structure a little bit. We're going to talk about how accessibility is really just structure in disguise. And you're going to see how I benefited from an accessibility feature that Ed would use as well. So again, by widening the path, you widen it for everybody. So that's the first thing I did when I got it. I went to View and Navigation Pane. Now the Navigation Pane has basically 3 sections. And this is part of the styles group in Word, but I mean, we won't have time to go into all of it. If you want more training, I'd be happy to do that. But there's, page view, and it just gives you basically thumbnails of all 68 pages of this document. Now, I use this quite a lot. You maybe would or maybe wouldn't, depending on your function and how you use documents. But I use it a lot because I have a lot of graphics. So I use it just to see if they line up. Okay, so you have, your page view, you have your headings, and then you have basically what is your find and replace. So it can find every instance of a word. Say we had a word in here with student success. It would find every instance of that, and you could replace it, or you could just have it be highlighted. But what I really care about right now is the headings. So remember, my boss told me to look at, student outcomes. So I knew she was going to have headings. The reason she put headings in was to make it easier for herself. Again, she's not thinking about accessibility. She's thinking about efficiency here. So here's why she put headings in. So let's say she had to go and change advisors. Somebody left. She can just click on it. She doesn't have to scroll and just change the advisor. So that would save her a bunch of time. So what I did was anytime I saw the word student, I just clicked on it and I read that section. So student learning outcomes, that's what the headings do. Right? And I have to use proper headings. A lot of times we use bold as a heading, but it's not a proper heading unless you use that styles group. So I went through student advisors, So I just kind of scrolled through here. Anytime I saw the word student, I clicked on it and I read it. Student success, student learning actions, student learning actions. And again, I'm navigating through this document. Again, Ed Summers will do the same thing with his screen reader. I'm just doing it with a mouse. But I'm benefiting from this structure. It allows me to, I didn't have to read all 68 pages, and I could catch up on The Young and the Restless. But I could go through just by clicking on those headings. It creates that structure, and it lets me navigate this document. And again, she did it to make it easier on herself. Even my syllabus, I use headings. Because really the only thing that changes sometimes are my office hours. So instead of having to scroll through, that just saves me time. It makes it more efficient for me. So I wanted to show you that so you could see how we use headings, why we use them, how they benefit you. And again, using those styles, what that does is that just makes things easier for you. And I would encourage you sometime, we don't have time to do this today, obviously, is just go through this styles pane and understand what these styles do and how to set these styles. And what it does is it's going to allow you almost to automate your document production. So you're going to be able to create documents a lot quicker and a lot easier. Side effect is they're going to be accessible because you used Word's built-in feature. But there's a lot more to it than that. I just wanted to show you one sort of simple thing you can do. And the way you do that essentially is you just have heading 1 or heading 2. Again, I could highlight professional development here. And I go up to styles. And I can make it a heading 3 or heading 4. You can see it's a heading 4 already because that's what's highlighted. And then it shows up in that navigation pane under view. And I have basically 6 levels of headings. And people ask sometimes, when should I use a heading 2 or a heading 3? And I always say, I don't know. I don't know what you're trying to categorize. What makes sense logically for you to do. But it allows you to, I want you to see that you can navigate through a document a lot quicker and a lot easier. And again, a side effect of really learning Word is it helps your efficiency. So I just wanted to show you that real quickly. So I'm going to stop that share. And I think we have some questions that we need to address.
Yes, there were a couple of questions, Mr. Evans, that were posted. And awesome information, definitely, of features of Word that I have not used in a while, even though I'm a certified trainer for Word. So interesting. So thank you for bringing those features to my attention. So I'm going to go backwards. We had a question from Bridget. I'm just telling you who the owner of the question is. In this case, Bridget wants to provide clarity. But the question that was posted, and there's one other, the first one is equation editor accessible?
You can make it that way with some difficulty. It's a process. The reason we use MathType is it's just a little bit easier to do it in MathType. But yes, you can with the equation editor. And hopefully, we've been working on something. Where's Bridget from? What college did she say?
Yes, Bridget, she is available and she is from Stanley Community College.
Okay, so yeah, Joseph is going to come and show you some of that. And one of the things that we'll have soon, Bridget, is we're going to have a math accessibility handbook similar to our online course accessibility handbook. And that should be out in April. Just to give you a behind the scenes and inside baseball thing is when we create these accessibility handbooks, what we do is, well, I don't know why I say we when I'm a one-man operation, but I guess the royal we. When we create these, what we do is we often use outside help too. we create these handbooks, and then I usually send them off to the accessibility people in Texas and California, and they kind of give me they fact check me, and they look at it, and then I get it back, and then I'll make revisions based sort of on that. And then by the time we released those guides, they were the best we could have done with it, right? That was it. You got everything you could out of me that day. So if there's any, issues on it, those are my fault, but that's how that works. So yes, you can make the equation editor equations accessible. There's a process to do that, and I'd be happy to share that with you. And I think that someone's coming to your college, Bridget, on the 25th, that will explain that to you.
Okay, so we do have one other question. The other question is, Bridget, as the owner, is at my college, we are required to post a photo of ourselves on our syllabus. What type of description should we provide as alt text?
Again, see, this is the art and science of it. I would really just describe what I was wearing. Maybe, like my picture up there, I would say a man wearing glasses with a extra large head, maybe, I don't know. But I would say something about I really wouldn't get into physical appearance. You can if you want to. I would just say, a man in a blue shirt with glasses is smiling at the camera. Because I don't think anything else is relevant, right? I mean, is what I look like really relevant to teaching these kids? Probably not, really. I don't think it's a necessarily relevant thing. I mean, I could say a good-looking man in glasses, but, again, that was a joke, and some of y'all look like you're laughing a little too hard at that. But anyway, so that's how I would do it, Bridget. I would just say what I was wearing. And yeah, I'm looking at this person's looking at the camera. In your case, I'm assuming you're a woman, Bridget. I'd say a woman looking at the camera wearing a whatever you're wearing.
Okay, thank you. Because I typically just put, this is a photo of your instructor, Mrs. Myers, and that's what when you were going over that part, I thought, oh, should I be describing more about what I look like? Because the whole reason that, we've been asked to put it in our syllabus is to make our syllabus more equitable and to, try to create the partnership with our students. So I wasn't really sure what, I was like, you just made me question what I've been putting for alt text. So thank you.
Yeah, and that's the art part of it. And again, it's, when I do presentations on alt text, I always tell people, look, this is more art than science, and there may be some things that you put in there, Bridget, that I wouldn't, and that's okay. My way is not. I always tell people this too. I'm showing you a way, not the way. I don't know the way. I know a way to do it, right? But I don't necessarily know the way, and I'm not sure there is a the way when it comes to that. But I think your alt text is fine. This is a picture of your instructor. I mean, that's who you are. And again, I'd probably say a little bit about what I was wearing, just and that's not really strictly necessary either. But yeah, I kind of like that. Any other questions? You can ask anything in the chat or anything that maybe wasn't covered adequately or that I maybe glossed over.
Yes, please feel free to unmute yourself to ask questions of Mr. Evans at this time. This is a good time to use our time with him to maybe look at some of the low-hanging fruit strategies that he shared. If you need clarity on those strategies, or as Bridget shared an experience that she has and asking, some feedback on what she's already doing. So you may unmute yourself to ask a question or put it in the chat.
And remember, there are no bad questions. There are only unclear instructors. That's what I tell my students. So there's no such thing as a dumb question. There is such thing as unclear instructors. Anything you want to see or that, like I said, that was not maybe adequately explained. Well, while we're waiting, I will say that we offer training on course design. We offer training on all kinds of accessibility. We do math, documents, PowerPoints, PDFs, web. So any kind of training you may need at your college, again, just email me. We can set it up. My schedule tends to fill up very quickly, but now with via Zoom, we can set something up. So if you need anything, just let me know. If something comes up tomorrow or the next day and you have an accessibility question, just email me and we'll get that to you. Look for the math guide should be available early April. The fact checkers have it now. They'll get back and then we'll do one final revision. And we'll have a section on math in your LMS, creating math from Word, OCR math. So maybe you got a PDF and you need to use that PDF to create accessible math. We'll show you how to do that. And then we'll give you a little bit of a primer on LaTeX and using LaTeX to create accessible math. And then we'll have a section on using how you would take equation editor equations and create accessible math out of those. That's a sort of an intricate process. It's not cumbersome, but it is intricate. There's a couple of steps you have to do there. But we'll have all that for you in April. And like our accessibility handbook, that's going to be a living document. We already have ideas in mind for future updates to that. We're going to add tactiles and SVG graphics and things like that. So we're going to try to cover all of that for you. And if you don't know what the accessibility handbook is, I can share a little bit of that with you. I've sent one to all 58 colleges. Now, I don't know if you've seen it. I don't know if it's something you use or it's been distributed at your particular campus, but I know at least one person at every campus has a copy of it. I've made personal phone calls to all 58. Well, I guess I don't have to make calls to Wake Tech because I'm there, but to all 57, I've called everybody. So that's one that you can look at as well. And if there are no questions, I may take a second just to maybe show you our accessibility handbook a little bit, and tell you where you can get it.
Okay. Thank you for sharing, and for your willingness to share and to tell us how it can be accessed by others, especially folks on this particular Zoom meeting, because that was on the tip of my tongue to ask you, okay, so how can we get access to it?
Okay, I'm sharing that now.
Okay.
Okay, so all of you have or you're able to get an account with the VLC Configio, and I'm going to show you that.
Okay.
All right, so it's located at, very easy to understand, vlcconfigio.com. And I'll give you, if you email, I'll give you a copy of the presentation you just saw. Again, I don't want to spam everybody's email. I know we all get a lot of emails, so I'll wait for you to contact me that you want it. I won't just, unsolicited give it to you. So you go to VLC Configio. Now, you have to set up an account, but if you've got and I assume you do, you have an EDU account at one of our community colleges, you can set up an account here. And you can do our free webinars. We have ones that are on demand that have already been recorded. They're all free. You can get those. We have a new thing coming up called Blackboard and Accessibility Training, or the BAC course that starts March 15th. And we have something called Hybrid and Online Teacher Training that also starts March 15th. This one is done by Jennifer Markey from Craven. And this one will be facilitated by Karen Duncan at Gaston College. So again, let's say I want to join the BAC training. I go to free here. I'll go to description. I'll add it to my cart. Now, remember, I have an existing account here, so I'll just log in. And I can add this to my cart. And I can register. I can check out, or I can register another participant. I'll go to register another participant. I'll go back here. Oops, I'll go back. Sorry, that went to the site. I go to our on-demand trainings. And these are ones that have been recorded that you can just get for free. They're recorded and captioned. Here's one we did in active learning in the online classroom. Let me go back to just the VLC Configio. So you have to register to make sure that you're, and they do that to avoid spam. And where is our, let's see. Oh, I got it. Our new edition. We just updated the Accessibility Handbook. So it's not available, but this is the page where it will be available. Or actually, the old one might be here, but don't download that. No, these are the, okay, no, it's not. These are the, all right, these are the old ones, but that should be available actually next week. But you know what? I'll stop sharing here. I'm going to give you a sneak peek at the new one that will be available at Configio. Let me see here. So I'm gonna give you a sneak peek of what you'll see, but it'll be at the Configio site. Let me share this one with you. So this is what it looks like. It's accessibility for online, it says Accessibility Handbook for online courses. We're gonna have a math one coming up soon. This one was revised in September 2021. We, again, just the inside baseball. Once we revise it, we get it back, we do another revision, we send it to our fact checkers in Texas and California. Sometimes they have notes for us, sometimes they don't. They do, we get it back. So we got it back. We did one more revision on some things. And then now it's going to be published next week. So it's a long, intricate process. So we got how to use this handbook, and I'll take you to the math section. So what the holdup was this time was the math section, which was totally my fault. Something changed in accessible math, and I missed it. And then on the fourth revision, I was like, oh, okay, I got to redo that. So if you don't use math type, sorry to make this sort of math centric. So it's got everything you need. It's got screenshots. It tells you how to do these things that we were talking about. I just wanted to show you. Sorry to scroll you to death. So that's kind of what it looks like. It gives you color contrast. It's a booklet. It's in color. We have screenshots, and you'll be able to get it through that Configio site. That Configio site gives you access to webinars, to recorded webinars. a lot of the things that have happened or that we do at all the VLC centers. Let me see if I can get to this.
So as you're scrolling through, I saw something on one of the screens that said to avoid inserting images using the insert tab. And it had the reason why. So that was interesting to see that. And I just used that feature yesterday for a document that I was composing.
Yeah, well, it depends on how you're, and again, a lot of this is going to be conditional. It's going to depend on the program you're using, how you're using it, and really what you want to accomplish. So like this, you have appendix, we have some appendix. I don't know what the plural of appendix is. Appendi? I don't know. But we have those, and this one is accessible math using math type. And it goes through everything you might want to do. You have some screenshots here. It shows you, fractions using LaTeX, the keyboard commands, what the math looks like, how to export it to the web, what you use to export it to the web. It walks you through creating this content. And that's kind of how we try to do it. We want to be able to hand you something that you can use or that you have in your hands that, you don't need me or you don't need anybody else. You can walk through these menus and understand what this does. If you need more training or more help, we are more than happy to do that. But we kind of want to maybe teach you to fish a little bit as well. So that's one of the things we do. So this walks you through all the menus of math type, how you would use it, how you would do it. Again, this shows you how to create a PDF from a structured Word document, how you would do that with screenshots, that kind of thing. How you should prepare that Word document. So this is a long document that we work really, really hard on. Give you descriptions on tables, how to do that. So that's what the Accessibility Handbook does. Again, if you email me, even though it's not on Configio, I can share it with you. I'll share it through our OneDrive, and you can use it. We try to update that every year and a half, depending on what happens, what changes in the accessibility world. Again, this one's late. As you can see, it was modified in September and it's February, so that's very late, but that's because I made a few mistakes on the math section. Well, not mistakes, there were changes that I didn't adequately address. So by the time we release these, we want to make sure that they are as accurate as we could. If there are any issues, please tell me about it. But again, you got a guide that was revised at least 5 times, that we consulted experts from all over the country. There's even somebody in the UK that does, his name is Volker Sorge. He's one of the leading experts on math accessibility. So we even use him sometimes to sort of consult with us. So it's the best we could do at that time. So I'll just say it like that. So yeah, I encourage you to go to that VLC Configio to register, to get those on-demand trainings. You'll be able to get this accessibility handbook. You'll be able to see upcoming trainings and get those on-demand trainings. And I will send you the link for all of that. I'll send you all this presentation, send you the links for everything if you want those.
So
Well,
one
maybe
of
I'll
the
give those to
things,
Miss Ali and let her distribute. I don't know.
yes, yes. That's what I was about to say. I'm
Yeah.
capturing some steps here as a follow-up for you. If you were to send me the handbook, I'll be happy to share it back with the participants on today's meeting, as well as the PowerPoint presentation. And these folks will also have access to the recording of the content you share with us today. And I've captured the website that you share with the vlc.configio.com that I plan to put back in the message to the participants. Gracie Davis, who you have had contact with email correspondence about getting ready for today, does a great job and follow up with all our participants immediately with any resources, links, and so forth for any of our presentations. So I will share the handbook as well as the link with her to be shared with today's participants.
Okay, then yeah, we'll do that. And as I said, if anything comes up or there's a question that maybe you don't have today, maybe you run into a situation tomorrow or next week, just feel free to email me at, let me put that in the chat.
Okay.
I guess I'm just sitting here talking when it's I'm used to doing stuff face to face. So I'm still not, I should be used to it, but I'm still not used to Zoom yet. I like seeing people's faces and getting that feedback and knowing when I got them and when I don't, and when, you know, they don't have they have a question. I like just being in the environment with the people I'm trying to teach stuff. But there's my, there's my email. So if you have a question that or situation comes up, please be willing to, or please just, reach out. I learn a lot from your questions. Accessibility is what we do. We like working on that craft. So there are, as I said, there are no dumb questions, just unclear instructors. So if you need something, just reach out.
Thank you. I'm seeing comments in the chat where folks are definitely saying, thank you for the information, that it was very informative. And I agree with you about learning. When you get questions from participants or questions from colleagues, questions from stakeholders, I agree with the learning, because with those questions, you end up getting answers. And oftentimes, depending on from where the answers come from, it could be more information for the presenter, for the trainer. So we all learn from those questions because of the answers that we're able to provide others. So I'm going to just do one more request. Are any questions, comments for our presenter, Mr. Evans, while we're with him today? Please do put those in the chat or unmute yourself if you have a question you would like to ask. I see a comment here about from Sylvan. And I would like to say who asked the question, who made the comment, for the owner to maybe want to provide some more clarity. But Sylvan said, I learned so many practical tips from this session, said thank you. And you had other thank yous from April, Judy, Bridget, as well as Kelly.
And I want to thank all of y'all for coming. I really appreciate it. I know, again, there are a lot of things you could be doing. Reach out at any time if you need anything. Just let me know. And I'm glad, Sylvan, that you got some practical tips. That was part of what I wanted to accomplish. So I reached at least one of you, so I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I imagine you reached many, and I noticed too some other thank yous from Antonio as well. And and a couple of folks said, yeah, it'd be great to get access to the information, the handbook and train as well. So just checking, making sure we catch all the comments. And so from Luke, thank you so much for a great and informative session.
Thank you, Luke, for coming. Appreciate it.
Okay, so I definitely agree. A lot of strategies were provided. I like the concept of low-hanging fruit, the concept of 5 things that we can do immediately to make our presentations, our content, documents accessible to everyone and not necessarily looking at making it modifications to accommodate one person or two persons, but to accommodate everyone who may have experience with our documents and so forth. So just want to say thank you so much, Mr. Evans, for sharing your presentation with us today. And we will have a follow-up with in reference to any resources that you provide that I can share back with the participants by way of Gracie, who will follow up in the email. Also in the chat, I did provide a link so that you all can share feedback with us. This will help us with planning future workshops such as what was shared with us today. And if you can give us your feedback, we'll know what to do and what not to do next time. And so it looks like we were definitely on point today. So thank you so much, Mr. Evans. And I'm going to put the link to the evaluation here one more time for folks to give us some feedback. And I'm going to start recording and to officially end the presentation.